Do you know somebody with a belt like this? Please make it stop. When jiu-jitsu was exported to America, the first line of business was to spread the sport, to get as many people interested as possible, to show that it has a place, a viable place among the martial arts systems and in self-defense. And we went nuts spreading jiu-jitsu just as wide as possible. And I'm thankful to have been on the tail end of that movement. When that happened, jiu-jitsu went about a mile wide, which is amazing. It's awesome and wonderful. But the downside is we went about an inch deep, and there is where the problems lie. As a coach, a professor, a lover of jiu-jitsu, we want to see this system of self-defense touch as many lives as possible and reach just as far as it can. We want to see it make it far in the professional circuit. We want to see it make its way in the sport realm, among our young people, that it would be a viable option for sport. And we also maybe want to see it end up in the Olympics one day. Honestly, the Olympics aren't really even a possibility right now because we seem to be having a hard time getting even the smallest things right. And I would consider the belt system a fundamental yet small thing that we need to get right before we're going to be recognized by a larger body. One of the things we need to do as coaches and professors is offer our students classroom training. That is, training that has little to do with actual technique and rolling, and get these guys in a classroom setting where we can teach them about history, about the belt system, about our lineage, about a great deal of other things. Those are just some of the classes that we offer at my academy to our student base. And if you don't have access to a classroom or a schoolroom or a church building or someplace where you can have some kind of conversation, you can have it on the mats. Just have your students come in for a special meeting, whether it's on a Saturday or Monday or whatever. It doesn't matter what day you pick, just off the schedule, and tell them, come in your street clothes, come comfortable, and I'm going to teach you some other things that you need to know about this sport in order for us to go a little bit deeper. But in order for us to go deeper, we first have to go deep ourselves, because how could we possibly take someone somewhere that we have never been ourselves? Having said that, understanding the belt basics is an absolute must for any academy that wants to be taken seriously. We all understand that the belts work from white to black: white, blue, purple, brown, black, and that there's 4 stripes that you earn between each belt. The confusion usually begins with the black belt, first of all, because there are relatively few of us among the jiu-jitsu community, and second, because the way the black belt works. There is a black belt with a white bar, a black belt with a red bar, a black belt with a blue bar, which is super rare and really only one group does it, so it's hardly worth talking about. And still, there is a red bar on the black belt, which has a white stripe on the left and the right of the bar. And all of these things mean something. So it's important that you, first of all, as the professor or the head instructor or the coach of your academy, understand what these things mean, that you get them. And secondly, it's important because you're going to have to teach your other students. There should be no confusion in your academy about what all of these distinctions mean and what their purposes are, because we wear belts on purpose. We wear them for a purpose, and everything that we do with the belt has a reason or a purpose, and you must know that reason lest you look like a fool. One of the things I love the most about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that earning belts is so organic. That is, we don't have like a system of A through Z, and then you get your first stripe, or if you go to 60 classes, you get your next stripe. It's so much more organic than that. And I love that about Jiu-Jitsu, and we need to do our best to preserve that. And it is something that frustrates the other martial arts, because every other martial art, every other system has a very linear structure. And, if you complete so many hours or so many classes, or you learn so much kata, then you get your next promotion. In jiu-jitsu, it's much, much more organic than that. And one of the things that is so special about that is that you can have a white belt and a black belt and everybody in between training in the same randori or taking even the same class, like technical class, and everybody's still learning and everybody's still getting fed. And that only happens in an organic structure as opposed to a linear structure where if a black belt comes to a linear structure class, and it's designed for white belts, they're going to be bored out of their mind. But that's just not how jiu-jitsu works. And I think that's very special. And I think we need to hang on to that organic structure. Yet I think the next phase of validating jiu-jitsu to the other systems of martial arts and the world is that we understand very clearly how our belt system works. It seems to be the least of things, but we have got to get on the same page on how these belts work, or we're never going to be invited to the big stage events like the Olympics. When I'm introduced to a brown belt or a purple belt or blue belt that has a white stripe on the left and right of their black bar, it makes me really sad because one, either they were taught very poorly or not taught at all from their coach or their professor, or they've somehow got to the point where they are in the sport with a fundamental misunderstanding about how the belt system works. And in either case, whether they were taught badly or they have a fundamental disconnect with how the belts work in jiu-jitsu, they should not be promoting other students into other belts or striping other students because they themselves don't know how this works. They themselves have a misunderstanding about the belt system, and they're going to be raising people who also have a misunderstanding about the belt system and inadvertently making us all in the jiu-jitsu community look bad. The white to black belt journey and the black belt and beyond journey have deep-rooted and meaningful and significant roots within jiu-jitsu and within this culture. And if we don't understand what those roots are and adhere to them, we cheapen the sport. I don't want this video to turn into our belt class, but if that's something that you guys want, maybe I can publish that in the future, like how we do belts in jiu-jitsu. If that's something that people need, I'd be happy to put it out there. But most of the confusion starts with the black belt because there's a black belt with a white bar, which most of your black belts will get. There's a black belt with a red bar, which means you're a teacher or a coach or a professor. And still there is the professor's black belt, which is a black belt with a red bar that has the white stripe on the left and right side of that red bar. Now, I want to make this little point of clarity as well. It takes one stripe on your black belt before you're allowed to give other black belts or to award other black belts. So that means you need to be wearing your black belt with a red bar for a period no less than 3 years before you are granted the ability or the honor of being able to give somebody else their black belt. But I want to call your attention back to this belt, the red bar with the white stripe on the left and the right-hand side. That is a belt that's reserved for your senior professor. So that means if you are a brown belt or a purple belt or, God forbid, a blue belt who has a black bar with a white stripe on the left or the right, you are taking an honor, you are taking a designation that was designed for somebody else, and you've applied that honor to yourself. So you have to be a professor, first of all, before you can have that white stripe on the left and right of the bar. Right? So if you're a brown belt, you're not a professor. If you're a purple belt, you're not a professor, and on down the line. So you can see where this is going, right? If you're wearing any other belt than a black belt, you shouldn't worry about that white stripe on the left and right of the bar. Okay, that belongs on a black belt with a red bar, which is a journey all of its own. And then that white stripe on the left and right side of the bar indicates that that's the senior professor, and usually the owner, maybe the CEO, but not always, doesn't always have to be. But that is reserved for your senior professor. That means even if you're the head instructor, even if you're the owner of the academy or the nicest guy in the whole community, if you don't have a black belt with a red bar, you have no excuse of wearing a white stripe on the left and right side of that bar. Seeing teachers and students wearing white stripes on the black bar of any other color belt other than black is at best laughable and at worst patently disrespectful. If that's you, if you're the guy who's got a brown belt with a white stripe on his black bar, listen, I don't want you to feel bad. I'm not here to fault find. I'm not pointing fingers. Remember, when we started spreading this sport, we were really, really good at getting it out a mile wide. But what happened was we went an inch deep. And so it doesn't surprise me that there are many, many individuals out there who are confused about this very thing. So if that's you, I don't want you to feel bad about it, but you should remove those stripes. You should take that white stripe off the left and right of your bar because it doesn't belong there. And then just simply explain to your students that you had it wrong. It's not that big of a deal. We all get things wrong. We all have to be humble and teachable and correctable. And so it shouldn't be a big deal to go to your students and say, hey, I thought this was part of the lineage, but it really isn't part of our culture. And this is why I have learned what this white stripe on the left and right side of the black bar means. And I understand that it belongs not even on a black bar, it belongs on a red bar that's on a black belt. Now, if you're a student who's watching this video and you're thinking, oh man, I'm in an academy where the head instructor, who happens to be a brown belt or some other belt, is wearing these white stripes, what should I do? Well, you should first turn them on to this video so that they can learn. If that doesn't help, let's get in contact. Put them in touch with me because I would love to have a conversation with them to help them, not to chastise anybody, not to be mean to anybody, but to help them to understand why we do what we do, because again, there's a fundamental misunderstanding there. Now, the sad part or the caution to this is that if your head instructor is not a black belt and they're wearing a white stripe on either side of that black bar, it could be a sign that there are other things missing in the academy because the belt is the smallest of things, right? The greater always includes the lesser. And if we can't get the lesser things right, certainly we're not getting the larger things right. So it may be in your best interest to find a jiu-jitsu school who's going to bring you up properly, especially if you have keyed your senior leadership into videos like these and education like this, and they still refuse to change. Listen, I hope this video doesn't come across as negative or fault-finding. My hope is to increase the depth of jiu-jitsu, and the least of what we could do is to unify in our belt system. It's already written for us. It's already done. It's decades and decades old. We just need to be keyed in on the information. And if you don't have that information, well, don't feel bad about it. You reach out to somebody like me or somebody like your professor, perhaps. Maybe they have it. Do some classroom training. I can provide it to you. But write down in the comment section below the things that you guys do to increase depth in your academy. I'd love to hear about it. I hope that you have an awesome week training. And as always, I will see you on the mats.